Mm, mm. Greetings. My name is Michael Miller. This is a Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. Thank you and welcome. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates. So if you see this trademark somewhere other than in my own place, they're probably a licensed, they better be a licensed affiliate. And of course, it embraces the whole core new core, and that would be those who recognize core new tension in the body and how it plays into whatever kind of movement they're doing. And then more specifically, or more specifically than that, but not as specific as being an affiliate, just how to survive as a Pilates instructor. To the point where it's not an issue of survival, it's a matter of maintaining the thrival, or the thriving. New word, maybe. So, it unnerves me a little bit that I actually think I have a contemporary audience on YouTube, and helps add an edge. And as you'll see coming up, I have 4 things to talk about today. And the first thing are the 3 things that you wrote to me about what you were thinking about or focusing on in your movement. And if you don't mind, I'll take those 3 words and just add my 2 cents without meaning to intrude on or interfere with or have you make whatever you want of those 3 things. It's just that when you bring them up to me, this is what you make me think of. And that's the subject is number 1, and those 3 things are alignment, breathing, and centering. Alignment, breathing, and centering. Alignment is a favorite of mine because what is alignment? What is alignment? And how do you know when something is more lined up than not? Which I would think of as gravity, right? So we're talking about gravity, and that right away is one of the key aspects to the nature that we find ourselves in, meaning alive as a human being, on a planet, in a gravity field, where we're made of water moving through air. So gravity is a big deal because we're loading we're carrying a lot of weight in our load that can easily incur stress depending upon how it's carried, right? It's my nature sometimes to have to think about what word I want to use next. And so alignment is alignment, right? Why alignment? And that was a thinking thing. But the Pilates instructor, in my imagination of what that would be, is always communicating sensationally. You can know what's what about the physics and whatever else you know about, but to me the point is an experiential one, that you have the opportunity to teach through the experience rather than just talk at or think and be thinking about it. So alignment, see, alignment. I used to hold up a top. There were 2 young, like 4- and 5-year-old brothers in an audience. And I took out a top that you spin, that balances. And I said to them, I says, I have this problem. I says, I can't get this to work. And I had a surface, and I did the top like this, and then I just let go, and it fell over. And their attention was there with me about trying to get this to work. And, you know, it's like I can't get it to work. And they both said, you got to spin it. Okay? And it's this particular top that has a pen, an ink pen. Watch this. Watch when it touches. It touches and then reverses. See that? See that? And to me, that reflects the physics that that movement is happening in, and that was the needle for a compass pointing north. This relationship of rotation to itself, if you will, or to another endpoint, is what really brought the aspect of oppositional rotation between axes as a physical thing. Let me see if I can. I don't want to waste your time. So alignment. Why? The first word that came into my mind when I read about alignment is tension. And that's my number 4 thing, is that tension can be a really good thing. And so when you talk about alignment, it's like, how do you know you're aligned? Or what is alignment? See, and one of the easiest forms of alignment is trying to line up, standing up in space, because in some way, if you're lined up, gravity goes this way rather than this way, right? It's like the bird in my Facebook feed that seems to be about to take off, and everything is so geared in tension for that. I want to climb right through the picture and witness the stream in which that tension is occurring. Okay? For me, okay, bear with me, or do this with me. Gravity forces the issue of alignment. That's what we're talking about here, alignment. So that's in this mantra of mine about gravity to uniform engagement that I call fluorescence, figuratively speaking, but from the gravity forces this issue, the issue of alignment. Okay? And that's such an easy point to make experientially. If you just have a person bend over or hold themselves at an awkward angle, it's not being anything that shows a difference without harm or injury to what it's like to be aligned versus not aligned. On a low chair, setting up endpoints, contact points at knee and metatarsals, meaning that the knee is in contact with the edge of the chair and the metatarsals are in contact with the pedal, and the pedal is springed to pull in up against the push out of the foot pointing. And if it's pointing, it's planting your foot in the ground, which is plantar flexion. And that leaves the opposite of that as dorsiflexion, which is pushing out through the heel. And both of those, when you go from one to the other, do what? They define an endpoint of tension, an endpoint of rotation at the metatarsals, at the ankle. At the ankle is what I mean to say. So your foot points and you push out through your heel, or point your foot. What's going on there? That's rotation around the axis at the ankle. It's the capacity of the body to rotate at that joint, at that place. So gravity forces the issue of alignment, and the best thing about Pilates of all, to me, is that alignment is you're breathing, so air is coming out of your mouth. Alignment is sensational. You can feel it. Which then, as a Pilates instructor, turns it all into a playground, because especially if you have spring tension at all available to you, because you have the ability to use external tension to make alignment more perceptible. Okay? So a long time ago, from now even, I was an old man teaching Pilates, and had a student who was making a living on stage as a dancer. So in some people's frame of reference, she was a dancer because that's what she did and she got paid to do it. And think how many different sources of input and training that person has. What do I want to do? As an instructor, I want to make a sensational connection, right, with my student. So I walked right over to do the point and flex on the low chair with a mirror angle so that she could see the alignment running through her ankle. And then, in a way, see, that's my job, is to help them get a complete coordination between body, mind, and spirit, or being, thinking, and observing. And by using the mirror, so obviously plugging in the observing to visual observing, not just sensational, which is there, but to use the eyes as well as the obvious sensation of feeling where alignment works best through the joint. That's sensational. And so once I did that, I had permission, or in a way, or credibility. I had credibility because I took what was most important to that person's career and their dance and helped them see and the sensation of alignment that we're playing with, that we're looking for, that we want to be strong in, because strength and alignment means no injury, right? The story goes that some people would come to Joseph Pilates as students to recover from injury and then go right back out and injure themselves to the point where they realized it was much better to stay within a training discipline in Pilates to stay out of injury. And a big part of that is alignment. Oh gosh, I could say so much more. But okay, gravity forces the issue of alignment. Alignment is sensational. How? Via, like people walking down the promenade, via tension between 2 points that triggers uniform engagement and makes alignment sensational. So learn that sign language, because the sign language will help you construct the words around it. So that's number 4 coming up. But tension's a good thing. And for alignment to happen, see, can you feel alignment when you're completely at rest, see, on a surface? Now, if the surface is tilted in gravity, well, yes, you can feel that, right? Because you have mass. You have a body, and it's a water balloon, and it will slough to whatever side gravity is oriented in if it's not 90. And so there's gravity right off the bat in terms of being perceptible. Which opens up this whole world of core new tension and how to engage yourself, how to imagine the engagement you're making within your body, right? When I engage my shoulders, I'm imagining and reaching for this as a rotational dynamic, physically, factually, biomechanically. My musculature is engaging in this rotational dynamic. And luckily I can feel the connection from my rib cage through my transverse down in through stomach, buttocks, and inner thighs to make this interaction, which comes up later on centering. So hold on a second. Let me just move on, because we could stay forever in this, right? Alignment. Tension takes 2 points. The body, endpoints of tension. How they operate, oppositionally, right? Tension. Now breathing is also very much defined, or tension plays a huge part in that. So take 2 basketballs, one that's inflated and one that's half inflated, and then drop them both. The one ball that is inflated has tension in it and bounces. The other ball that's not inflated or half inflated, that doesn't have the same tension of inhalation at its peak, right? Because we move through time, here's where you pull out a jump rope, and you have the 4-year-old and the 5-year-old swinging the rope around, and you make the point about breath being cyclical, and it's going around and around, it's going in and out from the time you were born to the time you die, and that it's foolish not to it's obvious to point out that when you breathe and when you're breathing and in which direction influences how you can move, or the degree of control you have in your movement. I could have just spit that out quicker if I thought about it. So breathing. You want your inhale to be occurring as you're undergoing the greatest loading in your body. So the furthest away you are from center, it's the inhale that takes you there and leaves you with enough to come out of that reach away from center into loading to recover coming towards center in the exhale. I'm talking about the swan on the ladder barrel, and part of it, you reach out to straight, and from straight, ideally, you go from straight on a line. And could be 6 points on a line. You could be in demi-point with plantar flexion and going all the way out to straight. That's very heavy. And don't do that if you're not strong enough. See? How strong you are is the whole thing. 9,999 times someone attempts to achieve something really difficult and fail in it, they would be much better off being closer to center, fewer endpoints, all of that, more contact. So, tension. All right, so here's what I'm talking about. Stop breathing. Now, you can do that, I think, right? Most people can. But now, what you can't do is just completely stop breathing into unconsciousness or death, right? Something called the autonomic nervous system. And you can fault me all you want, because it's a contrivance to intentionally trigger instinctual inspiration. So that's my key phrase there that you ought to know by heart to know what you're actually doing. When you wait for the inhale bus, that's my imagery that goes along with where it explains intentionally triggering instinctual inspiration. When you wait for the inhale bus, your exhale takes you out completely while you stay in the reach or the effort, waiting for the inhale bus. Meaning that your reach out, like in spine stretch on the mat, doesn't just stop when your mind decides to come out of it. That's the mind running the whole show. That's all thinking. And we, as our target, want observing to participate. And so the reach happens, and the mind continues the reach, waiting for the inhale bus. And what is the inhale bus? The inhale bus is your organic being, right? Coming to a point of instinct saying, I want air. And that is different than the mind deciding that it's reached enough and comes up and whatever. It's waiting for the inhale bus. It's waiting for the body to show up, see? It's the mind thinking, making the effort, and you're asking the observer to stand there on the corner and wait for the recognition of the being saying, give me air. You're a little kid putting your hand in a stream of water to see what happens. And the contrivance is aimed at facilitating the initiation of movement. Exhale all your air. When you need air, that's the key phrase. So you're an instructor, you have a group, and you know you want to be teaching them about this. You say, repeat after me. When you need air. I raise my hand. When you need air. And so anytime I ask you a question that sounds like a question, what are you going to answer? When you need air. Okay? So you tell them that you're going to be asking the question, and this is going to be the answer. And then throughout the session, private or class or group, at points where you're encouraging the human being to reach through the effort past the exhale and stay in the effort until there's a perceptible response organically of, I want air, right? To the point where you can ride that need to breathe in as the source of your initiation to your movement. Now, as far as I know, that's just an MMP contrivance, but it makes sense, and I encourage you to try it. And so I'm breathing. Your inhale takes you out away from center because it's the inhalation that creates the tension that supports the load. So in the spine stretch, there's an end point at the ankles pressing out through the heels without locked knees, and all of the shoulder girdle and head positioning and stuff, but they're reaching over something so they stay open at the hip and they're not in a creased hip. Why is Pilates not a creased hip kind of expression? From my world and my perspective, it's because it so drastically cuts down on the capacity of the human being to be uniformly engaged in its body. You're a hinge. You're not a hose. Okay? You're a hinge. You're a hinge, not a crimped hinge. See? It's all about a hydraulic thing, and once the science folks get fascinated by the math and physics in core tension, they'll also be drawn into, I think, hydraulics, because this whole uniform engagement thing is really a hydraulic thing, right? Because it's about the body and primarily being mostly water. So then that takes us to centering. So we're on the first title, the third word, centering. And again, tension comes to mind. And wouldn't you know it, toys are somewhere else. Okay. Do you have a carpenter's tape? You know, a tape that you pull out, and then you pull out, and then whoop, it goes back in, right? I do that, and I'm talking about in a presentation, helping to make it sensational and to draw a person into an organic connection to what you're trying to show for me, about the core. And about how it's a grip, it's an internal grip, and that where does that grip come from? See, now I really want the tape measure. It's like the second time in 2 years that I've ever walked away from it. Hold on a second. Okay. All right. All right. That was worth the trip. This. I say, look at this. And I go, wow. And I go, and when I let go, it's like, what happened? I can, you know, I make this happen, right? And then it goes back in. Why? Well, and then, see, it's best to have anyone explain it to you rather than you explain it to them. And so this whole thing about, well, there's a spring inside. Yeah, there is. And yet in the human body, so do you see how the direction of those two coils match hips and shoulders, right? And so to make it more visual is my point that I'm trying to make, is that the challenge is to be able to take a grip that exists in many of us where we just bend over backwards and we let our stomach hang out, and we're taking all the load of our body through our skeletal structure, and that's why we hurt in our back, right? One reason anyway. And so the whole process of centering, from what you've heard me say about the center, the core, is a grip at the hips. Now see, and I just had the thought that you could mean centering in a lot of other ways than I'm taking it. Okay? but allow me just to take it one way as clearly as I can while I can. And that is that the first and foremost thing to recognize about the center, if we're talking about the body, and if we're talking about the core being the center. Now see, you may not mean center like that at all. But I want to make a distinction about center and eccentric, moving away from center. So this is my word for eccentric, right? Here's the center, and there's moving away from it. Okay? Here's the center. Never done that before. And then there's moving away from it. Well, and this whole thing comes back to alignment and what you talk about in terms of how you are in your body. My point is that here's a bungee cord thingy, and there's what it looks like. And I can say, be straight, be straight, be straight. And it's not going to be straight unless I put it under tension, right? And that takes 2 points. And so this spring on the inside of us in our hips, I think, is the organic response of distinguishing what stays in here from what goes out there, right? That makes us human beings. That holds intact the definition of who we are as human beings, at least in our bodies, okay? So I'm talking about bodies. And so this whole thing about shutting off urine flow is that example I've used before where you roll up a piece of paper, and then how do you roll it up tighter? You go to the inside and roll it in tighter. That's all muscular twitch and personal, and very rarely do you even have the kind of intimacy with a student to be able to personally cue. The whole situation depends, right? My point is that when you let a student know that, see, when you let a student know that there is muscularity involved in getting a grip, and that grip is like a spring that has tension in it. Now see, that would match more the hips, wouldn't it? Right? Because there we are going this way in our grip. I have 2 different points of view about center or centering. In the beginning, you know, Joe and everybody talks about the core, and the core is just is the ability to engage your body in a grip like this, and that when you go deeper in your core, you're literally using musculature to get a dynamic of engagement closer and closer to the axis that the grip is defining, right? You make a grip, that defines an axis. The closer you get to the axis, and the wider it is, but for right now, the closer you get, the more control you have. And the more control you have, the more load you can bear, right? And that's what this whole game is about. When you come out from the center, Pilates is an eccentric effort. It comes out from center. And it comes out from that need to breathe in. It comes out from the going in of the grip, right? If you think of life expanding, and that the expansion of ourselves into this world is one of opening up into extension, if we're going to survive, we better be able to go, oh my gosh, and get closer to center, especially if you're about to jump off or you're falling off of a roof. Don't lose your train of thought. Going in closer to center here causes there to be more left over here. Meaning if I had the spring in my hands and I went tighter in toward the middle, well, that spring amount goes tighter in the middle, and all this other stuff comes out away from that. So the degree to which you're able to involute your grip, the more control you have because you're stronger, because you're closer to the core. And so you can look at things as out from that center. But once you go from being a nautilus shell to a human being, you end up with more than one axis of rotation that you're capable of and that you rely on, I think. And so when you create a coil going one way, and then come up to where it started and make a coil go the other way, there's a place in here, somewhere in there, where this curve changes direction from the way it's curving to the other way. The direction of the curve changes. Now, some translators of mine are off and running because they know what an inflection point is. Sometimes they've known it in math, and sometimes they've talked about it in physics, and even in economics. The inflection point, where a curve changes direction. And so I tell a person, if this were an octopus, so I make the middle here an octopus, and said that that octopus reached out and grabbed two fixed points, right? And pulled, their grip got tighter. What would happen there in the middle? Well, in the middle, it would be pulled apart. Right there in the middle, it would be pulled apart, right? And that middle is called an inflection point. And so, for me, in the MMP point of view, when you get involved in core new tension, yes, you go deeper into a core of your hips as a center, but when you tie it to the shoulders and create core new tension, you add to that this lengthening from the inflection point. Okay? And when you talk about being stable, moving through space, that's coming from making the tension between endpoints, between axes of rotation in your body. And the kicker, not the kicker, just the best part of all, right, is it's sensational. So centering, there were two things. How I think about the center here, and that the center is like, in this, is spring-loaded. And what we do when we shut off urine flow and feces, we use muscular engagement to release and maintain definition. How's that? And it's in so doing that it's taking the paper and going in tighter toward the center. You draw the paper in closer toward the center from the inside. And you draw your core together from the inside. It's an opposite to the expansion to seek control. Great words. Inflection point. Grip. Good. Okay, so number two, a better grip. And I just talked about that. What we're after is a better grip here, right? And adductors play such a huge role in helping engage the musculature in that grip. Okay, so what's the difference between a my mind wants to say tuck and arch, but no. What's the difference between a tuck and a scoop? Maybe nothing, but a tuck is where your spine is not in a curve and your sacrum is anchored flat. So you're in a tuck like that. Your sacrum would go flat to the wall if you were standing. Whereas in neutral spine, where your spine had a curvature to it, that's not a tuck. If you're in that natural spine and you're pulling in your abdominals in, that's a scoop. Okay, well, that's how I used to say it. A tuck is structural, and a scoop is muscular. And the whole point of the center and the core and all that is to be able to hold an ideal position that allows you to maximize your uniform engagement of yourself muscularly, all of it, to float like a butterfly through space. And that was my number 3. I've already made that point, but in all of these, alignment, breathing, and centering, tension, and what we're doing in it, and how we're creating a center. Part of me wants to discuss other interpretations of centering, but let me go on. Okay, this is very practical consideration or recommendation. In terms of being studio savvy, that's the title, studio savvy. And you know, that could be a whole summer drama on television. But studio savvy that I'm talking about to survive as a Pilates instructor, I'm pretty sure, well, maybe not, but a lot of studios have ways of keeping notes or track or a file on students as they attend that facility, as they come see you. You're working as an instructor through somebody else's paradigm. I'm saying that knowing how that paradigm is structured for an instructor to carry out their role, and I'm not talking about any of the money part of it. I'm just talking about post notes, like as a means of capturing observations in a structured format that sort of say what's your impression, where they've been, what you see, where you think you're going. There's generally some kind of structure in note-taking like that, right? You know this. But I'd say if you're unfamiliar with it, learn it, or be more aware of how the academia side of things, especially in the realm of physical therapy, takes notes on a patient that they see. See, a physical therapist sees a patient, to me, right? And a Pilates instructor sees a student. And just for understanding who you are and what you're about, for me, helps me clarify what my limitation of concern or interest is with regard to what I need to know. And this is true of anybody. What do I need to know to do my job? And then everything else is ornamental on the tree, but the tree itself matters to me. And so in being able to survive as a studio, to fit in somewhere, you got to fit in somewhere. And part of that is notes. And part of notes has a structure to it in different fields and different countries, but being aware of or open to or scouting out a comparison between notes will help your observations matter more because they'll fit in more. Observing, again, today on the news, something about something observing. I don't know, I think that's it. Not a clinch, it's a physics thing. Oh, yeah. The MMP point of view, is a point of view you have to be willing to entertain or to look at. Um, and to the point that it reinforces sensation, to the point that you find feeling and coronary tension, you find the sensation of alignment, and you find an engagement of musculature that works for you. Thank you for saying thank you. And I hope that there's enough body of work out there behind me to make whatever comes after sort of surfing the wave. I've always felt that the further back you go, the better I get in terms of delivering my message, even though what we are as human beings translates to the moment that we're in and the simulation that we've constructed that we're responding to, right? Simulation that we've constructed. All right. Life can't live forever. Read between the lines. See behind the curtain. Add 2 and 2. Direct your thinking. Geist.